Hello and welcome to Business Reporter's The Future CEO campaign. I'm Alistair Greener and today I'm talking to Lynn Scott from Lynn Scott Coaching. Good morning.
Good morning.
What exactly is a good leader?
I think it's a combination of ambition for the organisation, intelligence and brilliant people skills. The leaders that are really good do a few things very well, and one of those is that they help people understand where the organisation is going and why. So we sometimes talk about vision and mission and so on. And that vision and mission, whatever we want to call it, is articulated in such a way that everybody, from the most junior to the most senior people in the organisation, can both understand it and get behind it. Something that really good leaders do as well is pay a lot of attention to creating a culture and climate where people can really thrive, love going to work and do their best work. And many organisations have beautiful words on their value statement like openness, honesty, transparency, respect, value, appreciation and all of those things, but they don't actually live them, they don't mean anything. But the organisations where those values, those behaviours are lived on a daily basis are often superb places to work. I think something that's really important to know is that as a leader, your actions are very visible. So if you say one thing and do another, people won't trust you, you'll lose your credibility, and people will then start to not tell you things and go into that, what I call the survival mode. That's not a great place for people to be because their energy is all spent trying to survive in the organisation, whereas what we want is for them to be creative and be able to really do their best work without fear of getting it wrong.
In your opinion, do you think anyone can be a good leader?
I know that everybody can develop good leadership skills. I'm 100% convinced of that. But the key is people have to want to develop them. If they just assume that they're okay, they're good at what they do, and don't actually ask people to tell them if that's the case, then they're probably not going to develop those good leadership skills. And people sometimes say, well, where do I even start with this? And I think we can make it really simple. The starting point for me is just by asking people around you a couple of simple questions. So firstly, what am I doing well as a leader to help you succeed and enjoy your work? And secondly, what am I doing that's getting in the way of you doing good work? And what would you like me to change so that I can help you be even better at what you do? And the more leaders that are willing to start with those two questions, the better.
You talked there about development, and one of the key things here is actually developing leaders in the first place.
Yes.
Whose job is it to develop those leaders for the future?
You've just reminded me of a phrase, something about it takes a whole village to rear a child. I think it's an African proverb. What I'd like to see more of is people learning leadership skills from an early age, so at school, in further education, in higher education. Too many leaders assume that it's the function of the HR department or the learning and development department to send them on a course. And I don't think that's enough. I think it really helps to have people around us that can help us develop different facets and aspects of our leadership. And the more we can get people to help us to do that, the better. So it's kind of a joint responsibility, really.
For those leaders who aren't strong, who are struggling, on the whole, what do you find that they're missing?
I rarely find they're missing intelligence. I mostly find they're pretty smart people, but what they're missing in most cases is what I described earlier as those brilliant people skills. So often leaders are really bad at listening to what their team is saying. They're really bad at running meetings. They're often really lacking in awareness of how to build and develop a team. What they think is developing and building their team isn't necessarily. And they often really struggle to have concise, important conversations with people. Many leaders will avoid giving some of those difficult messages, and that creates a lot of problems further down the line. Sometimes people fail to understand what motivates their team, And often they'll say to me, what do I do to motivate my team? Well, my response is, well, ask them. It's quite a simple question, and what motivates you or me doesn't necessarily motivate them. So ask the question. In fact, I think if leaders asked a lot more questions and listened to the answers, leadership would be a lot better all round.
One of the things that many leaders struggle with is time management. There's always too much to do in too little time.
Yes.
What's your advice for somebody in that position?
It's something we hear from everybody. I think nobody says, I've got so much time, I don't know what to do with it, do they? But I think paradoxically, the people that manage their time really well are the people that take time out to think about how they're using their time. Because if we take that time away from the screen or the meeting room, we often discover a lot of things. Firstly, we're going to meetings where we're adding no value and getting no value. Secondly, if our habit every morning is to go into our emails, we tend to get stuck there for a lot of the time. So change that first thing in the morning habit. Often there are things that we're doing that somebody more junior than us could do instead. So there's a lot of ways that we can find more time for ourselves, but if we don't take the time out to look at that, to think really well, we just keep staying stuck in that reactive mode.
For many leaders, the moment which is the toughest when they've just got into their new position,
Yes.
They've got that big promotion that they've probably wanted desperately,
Yeah.
and then they start to struggle.
Yeah.
What are the biggest issues for somebody in that position that you find?
And I was one of those people actually too. When I got my first big senior management promotion, I was the only woman amongst a sea of much older men in suits with a much broader corporate background than me. So I felt like a fish out of water, and that's one of the problems, feeling, as we sometimes describe it, like the imposter. One day I'm going to be found out. What am I doing here in this room? So that's one of the reasons. I think the other one is it's quite natural for us to stick with what we know and to stick with what we've done well in the past, what we've been rewarded for, because that's easy. We know how to do it. Some of this other stuff doesn't come so easily. So sticking with what we know rather than looking at what is required of me now I'm in this different role is a key question that we need to ask when we've just been promoted.
It's interesting you highlighted there your first experience of becoming a leader in this very male-dominated environment. What do we, if things have got better, but there's still a long way to go, so what do women need to do to get themselves promoted and get themselves into those leadership roles?
I agree. I think things have got better. And one of the things I wish I'd done, and I encourage people to do, is to find people that can support you, that are on your side. For many people, it's what we might call a wise owl, someone who's been there and done it and can offer guidance and advice. Sometimes it's somebody like me, a leadership coach, to help women develop their confidence, to help them, I say find their voice, they actually have a voice, but to help them use it where they might be shying away from using it. Some women really like women-only support groups. So those are the kind of areas where women can get support. But you know what, Alistair, I think those things are important for men too, not just a female issue.
Now, you've created this effortless leadership revolution. Now, that to me sounds a bit of an oxymoron, because I'm not sure how leadership is ever effortless.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. And when we watch people who are really good at something, we often say, God, they make it look so easy. But in my experience, it's not that everyone is a natural leader. Clearly, that it's not that's making it look easy. It's often because they've put in the practice, they've asked for the feedback, they've focused on what they want to change, and they've made it happen. If you think back to when you first started to drive, for example, certainly I found it, how am I going to manage to do all this at the same time and concentrate on all these different things? And it was clunky, it was difficult. I thought I'm never going to be able to do it. But actually now I can get in a car every day and go. Leadership's the same. The more you practice, the more you focus on the things you need to change, and the more you experiment day by day with doing things differently, the sooner it will become effortless.
The challenge with that is that practice may make perfect, but it also takes a long time. For somebody who's just got into that role, how would you suggest that they almost express that experience to become effortless? What are the sort of things they can do in the very beginning to help them on that road?
Well, the first thing, as I suggested earlier, is maybe asking those two questions. Now, clearly, if someone's in a brand new role in a brand new organisation, people aren't going to be able to answer those questions very well. So there might be a couple of different questions they ask about what people need from the leader and so on. So that's the first thing. Don't assume that you're good or bad at something. Ask, find out. But once people are a little bit established, they can do a couple of things. Firstly, we've talked about the feedback. Get one of the psychometric instruments, and I particularly like the ones that enable them to see other people's perspectives of them. So again, you're getting a benchmark, if you will, of where you currently are as a leader. Secondly, once you've got that information, you can decide what, if anything, you want to do differently. Once you've decided, I think it's really important not to try and do everything at once, but also to ask people, or rather to tell people around you, this is what you're going to see me do differently. And I'm going to practice doing things differently and then start doing something different each day. So it might be, rather than going into a meeting and speaking first, you just might ask people to share the information, to ask questions. You're changing what you do one stage at a time to get a different result from the people that you're with.
What you're talking about makes perfect sense, and I'm sure most people would probably agree, but they might also say, if they're a little bit more cynical, well, this is great, but this is all available in books, it's in online articles, in publications and so on. Why do I need to bring someone in to help me?
You're right. I think there are 100,000 or so books on Amazon just with the word leadership in the title. There's a couple of reasons. Many leaders read a lot but don't actually change anything. So they understand something academically but not then what to do with it. Secondly, we all learn in different ways. So some people can learn from a book and apply it, but I find most people can't. So they prefer to have someone next to them, supporting them, giving them some ideas on what to change, helping them with some experiments they might want to do, and giving them feedback on how they're coming across. So it's about different learning styles and making the information relevant to their daily work.
Now, you've worked with many organisations. Typically, at what point do they bring someone like you in to help them?
It can be at various stages. So sometimes it's when somebody's up for a promotion and they just need a little bit more support in some way. It might be when they've just been promoted. It's often in cases where we've got really good people in place. They're great with their level of functional expertise, but they struggle maybe with some of the behavioural stuff, the brilliant people skills I spoke about earlier. That's most commonly when I'm brought in to help, because it's not about reading how to motivate in a team. It's about saying, right, okay, you've got 5 people in your team. How do we find out from each and every one of them what is going to motivate them? So it gives them the real practical application, tools, ideas that they can just pick up and use straight away.
If you wanted our viewers to take away, say, 3 key points for them to remember, what would they be?
Ask for feedback from your people, act on that feedback one step at a time, and encourage your team to do the same.
And let's be honest, we all need better leaders in our organisations today.
We do.
And we also recognise that takes time. And it's really interesting to hear your perspective of what can be done to create a good leader, which is going to be to everybody's benefit. It's been great talking to you, Lynn Scott from Lynn Scott Coaching. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.